Welcome. Today is December 19th, 2023. It is 18:07 or 6:07 p.m. and this is the Board of Directors meeting for the Windham School District, and we're calling the meeting to order. So we will start with public comment. Do we have anyone with public comment? Oh, Sarah Adamant?
I do. So yesterday we had a open house for Townsend via Zoom, and I thought it was pretty neat that there was these clubs and activities at Townsend that we didn't have here. But one thing that amused me and excited me was that they were run by parents and volunteers. And I was wondering what Windham Elementary School would look like right now if some of the energy that was put into being grumpy about the things that we don't have, if a little bit of that energy was put into making the school what we wanted it to be, if we would be in this predicament right now.
Thank you, Sarah.
I love your comment.
Thank you.
That was well said. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Let's see. I see coming. Is that Joyce or Russ?
It's Russ asking the question. Where should I look on the web to find the printed version of the minutes for the meetings?
So if you go to the Windham Central Supervisory Union website, in top far right there's a drop down for boards. Then you select the Windham board, and then you select, and then it has the different options. Minutes is on there, agendas are on there, reports, other things. It's also where you'd find the budget, would be under the reports link, but minutes and agenda should also be on there.
Okay, so it's not being posted on the Town of Windham website yet.
Yeah, I don't control that. All I do is control the SU one.
All right, thank you.
Yep. It looks like you have David Cherry with his hand up.
Yes, go ahead.
Way.
Dr. Cherry, go ahead.
I see on the agenda tonight that you're going to discuss the issue of tuitioning school. I've been attending these meetings either in person or watching the videos since last spring. And I'm concerned that the 6 people who are at a private school right now have been excluded from consideration in the meetings that I've watched. I feel that they made the choice to tuition their kids out of their own pocket at a different institution because they had a sense that there was potential confusion and or dysfunction that may happen in the Windham Elementary School, particularly during the late summer sessions that were being held in August without a full staff. I certainly understand their position, and what has unfolded since then has confirmed their position. They are citizens of the town. They're paying taxes. They've been supportive of the school in the past. And at this point, they're not being considered to have tuition paid for their kids. It seems to me that if an addendum had been made in the last meeting to include that as a possibility, it might have happened. And really what was said there is, let's make it the simplest possible so that they approve this and we don't lose control over our own school. Well, it's not a simple situation. And in in those statements, there was nothing to let's make it the best we can for our students. And I consider those 6 families part of those students. The only fellow that stepped up to that was Marcos at the end of the meeting, pointing out that these kids have had a rough time with this. We need to solve the problem. Kids were being traumatized, as witnessed by the fact that some of them were crying. All of these are reasons that you may not want your kids in the school, and you may take out of your own pocket money to pay for tuition elsewhere. But I think now, as we're trying to, quote, resolve the problem, these people took action because of the problem and should be considered in decision-making when you go into executive session. That's all I have to say. Thank you for allowing me to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else for public comment?
David, are you a part of a media organization of any type?
I'm a retired surgeon, resident, and owner of property in Windham for over 23 years.
Okay, thank you.
And before we get too far along, Daniel, are you all set with everyone that's in Zoom land? I know we have Carolyn. Carolyn, is that Carolyn Rubin? And you're muted, Carolyn, if that is you.
Carolyn Partridge.
Yeah, is it Carolyn Partridge?
It's a new iPad.
It is a new iPad, so yeah. If you could identify which Carolyn you are, please, that would be greatly appreciated. And I think Gail's iPad, that's Gail Wyman.
I'm Carolyn Rubin. Yes, it is.
Okay, go team. I think
And
we got
Jeff
it.
Rubin.
And Jeff Rubin, okay, thank you. All right. So changes to the agenda.
So I'm going to suggest two additions to the agenda, Abby. One is an executive session to talk through some contractual issues of existing staff. And I have some recommendations for you guys. And the second item is just on a new business, has to do with a new position around the facility during the time of the closure.
So executive session, same time as the other executive session, so we can use that motioning down at the end, or did you need to have that prior?
You can put it wherever you want. It is a different motion to get into it. So the two separate ones, we could combine them if you want to, or just do a separate one, whatever you choose.
Okay, so we'll move that down under executive session, so we'll make another thing before we adjourn, right? Because that doesn't need to happen before anything else in the meeting.
Nope.
And then new business, did you want that to be after the policies? Or because it's involving Greg, do we want to be respectful of Greg's time and maybe put it a little bit further up in the agenda?
I would prefer to see Greg stay up all night, but I do appreciate that, Abby, and we can put it up at the front of the new business.
Okay, so we'll do, yeah, let's, we don't have a principal report, right?
Nope.
So let's give you the first slot there, Greg.
That sounds wonderful.
All right. Okay, any other changes to the agenda? Everything is good? All right, moving on to correspondence. There's been a bit of correspondence, and that was not included in the packet here, Bob, right? I'm only seeing the minutes to approve and the policies. So we do have the tuition requests that are gonna be heard later on. I don't believe I received any other correspondence other than the tuition requests.
The only other correspondence you have is from the Secretary of Ed,
Oh, yeah,
right? So that is, I guess, correspondence?
that, you're right, would be correspondence. So,
And I may have a separate list than you do. I don't have any new tuition requests since we've talked last, I don't think. Unless you.
There is one for Crystal, I believe.
Right, but that's tied to a previous one, though. I didn't count that as a new one. So I don't have any new families requesting anything for other adjacent public schools, which is what we were anticipating might happen. I don't have any for that at this point.
interesting.
I didn't receive any.
Yeah, I did not even, so.
That's correct. I didn't see any others.
Okay, so with that, and that being the correspondence, for those individuals, are you content with that being dealt with under executive session, or Does anybody have their correspondence that they would like to read? And then for the correspondence that we received, Bob, do you want to read that? Are we just going to include from the letter from the?
I think we can just state the basic gist of it, which is that the secretary affirms the decision that the board made.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Crystal, I see your hand up.
You can just do my correspondence in executive session.
Okay, thank you. Okay, not seeing any other and hearing anything else for correspondence, we'll move on to old business. Approving the minutes for 10/17, 11/28, 12/5, and 12/8. I make a motion to approve those minutes. I think you did a fabulous job, Daniel. Thank you so much. Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? As I said, great job, Daniel. Appreciate
I'm
it.
sorry, before I zoned off for a second there, reading that letter. Is a motion for all 4 of the minutes or?
10/17, 11/28, 12/5, 12/8.
Perfect,
Yep.
thank you.
So, not hearing any further discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye?
Aye.
Okay, the minutes for 10/17, 11/28, 12/5, and 12/8 are all approved. Approved financials next on there.
Right, you had voucher number 37 for $50,266.02.
I didn't see that.
You did.
I don't think I did either. When was this sent?
I'll have to go back and look. I don't have the date it was sent. It says 12/15 on it, so it would have been just in the last couple of days.
Daniel, did you by any chance get that?
Which pay order is that?
37 for $50,266.02.
I'm searching now.
You said 57 or 37?
Number 37.
No, I have the previous one, but I don't. I think it's pay order 10, but I don't have.
Check into that. I don't know why it didn't.
I didn't get it either.
Okay. We'll wait till next time then.
All right, easy peasy.
It's weird.
Okay, so we're moving right along here. Greg, new business, you're on.
All right. So my thought was to create a kind of a part-time position to, just monitor the building, keep track of things, and to try to maybe even build in some hours to address some of the, punch listy kind of maintenance items there. And so I kind of created a job description for it. And I was just wondering, how you all felt about such a thing. I initially had thought of, just trying to appoint someone, but then realized that if we're going to make it a job, we kind of have to put it out. But I still think this person will apply and and be a potential person. But I just think it'd be nice to have someone up there, especially if it works out that the public ends up wanting to use the building. They could manage some of that. They could manage the heat. We have monthly water meter readings that have to take place. So just having someone kind of regularly swinging in to do that, and that could potentially take on some of the small maintenance things that are around, like light bulbs out, ceiling tiles, maybe paint some things. I think that there's kind of an opportunity with empty building space to kind of make some nominal cost upgrades, and improvements that by just labor, you're not going to have a ton of material cost with.
Sarah,
I think
has a
that's a
question?
good idea.
Sarah Allen?
So Greg, you said that if the public wanted to use the building, having this guy or girl, this person around would kind of help navigate that. Does that mean if there happened to be a homeschool group, that would be considered part of the public and could use the building?
I'm not making that determination. I'm saying that if the board chooses to allow a homeschool group to do such a thing, it would be nice to have somebody to help coordinate and manage that. Because ideally, I would like, if it was me, I would just turn the heat down in the building to say 60, 62. But if you were like, hey, we know there's a group of people that want to come in and use space from, just to have like a little homeschool co-op type of thing, right? They could get on there and they could schedule that. They could change that. They could be here to make sure they clean up after in case anything happens, just some of that little self kind of protection type of thing. So I think your board would need to approve things like that, if you want to do that. I mean, I don't know that there's any law against it. So.
Okay. Thanks, Greg.
Okay,
Russ or Joyce?
Either for Greg or for Lori. Have you guys priced out this position?
In the low 20s, $20-25 an hour type of thing. I mean, because it's like if you're just going to ask someone to swing by for an hour or two a week, in general, you got to kind of make it worth the travel. So the idea was kind of like, say up to $25 an hour, 2 hours a week. And my what I had put in the job description was like, and up to like an additional 10 hours a month for projects. I figured that way, if someone said, hey, I've got an 8-hour day, I can get in there and I could paint this and fix that, then they can get in there, get tools set up and really make an efficient use of a day, type of thing. I would try to manage that with that person. It would be approved through us, you guys have money still in a blanket PO at WW, so you could buy paint, you could buy some supplies down there. So if this person's an employee, they can use that account. Then they could submit the receipts to me and we'll make sure they get paid. And so.
Awesome. Thank you, Greg. I don't know if that's Joyce or Russ. And then Crystal will be next.
It's Russ. My question to Greg is the thermostat in the school building a programmable thermostat, like a Nest thermostat? One where we can control the heat? Because I've noticed, because I work in the town office, sometimes when the school is not occupied, the furnace is going like crazy out there. And I'm thinking that there's no reason to heat the building to 72 degrees when there's nobody in there, particularly on weekends and over Christmas and holidays.
The building has a building management system, a BMS. It currently has night setbacks, I believe, into the low 60s. I believe it sets back at, I think, 3:30 or 4:30. It will kick back to about 64, and it stays that way all weekend and every night. And then at about 5:36 in the morning, it kicks back on and brings the building back up to temp.
Thank you.
Thank you, Russ. Crystal, go ahead.
I was a little late to the meeting, so I'm just wondering, have we given people permission to use the building? Because I just missed the first 10 minutes.
We haven't had any discussion around that.
Thank you.
Just hypothetical for now.
Okay. So is there anyone is there any other questions for Greg, or can he move along on his merry way here?
Yeah, I would say if you guys do want to do this, I would have you do that through a motion and a vote, just so, because it's a new thing. And you have to write the second when Greg's here, but if you were going to establish this, you wouldn't want to do it through a motion and a vote.
Okay. So
my request would be for approval to post and hire for a part-time facility management position. Basically, what I put in the job description was January 2nd to June 30th of 2024. So.
We'll have it before then, correct?
Not before January 2nd.
Yeah, we won't have a
Oh,
meeting.
later in the morning. Okay.
So I guess it would be an immediate motion if we did it.
Well, can we act on something that we added to the agenda today because it wasn't warned?
That's a good question.
So I like the idea, and I don't know how that would work.
Well, one
I
suggestion,
think, well, we added things, Bob, we added things to the West River agenda last week that were voted on and approved.
okay. The other thing I want to say is if you did want to have a conversation at some point about building use during the temporary shutdown, and as a more general conversation, you could do a special meeting at some point just to have that topic and then have this also be sort of like,
That would probably,
Part
as
B.
much as I know, Daniel and Rory are gonna be so excited to have another special meeting.
so it would be contained, I think.
Through the holidays.
Yeah, Genki did my excitement for this.
I know, it's just awesomeness.
Should be
So,
excited about that one though.
but I think that we could probably make that pretty, a pretty quicker meeting, maybe. So does that sound reasonable, Dan and Rory, to do that so that we can make sure it's warned, people have some time to kind of digest and chime in any information before we allocate or decide to allocate funds?
I mean, as far as the posting goes, I'm okay either way. But if Greg has seen this warned and passed on the same meeting for something like this, then I'm okay with that too. It's up to you.
Yeah, I mean, just
I think it's a pretty benign. I think it's a pretty benign thing. We need it either way. Don't want the pipes bursting or,
Happened both ways.
What's that?
It really has happened both ways
Okay.
in different meetings.
So then, I mean, we still are gonna have to have, like you said, a special meeting for the other piece as well.
Well, I mean,
Well, that's separate though, I think.
yeah, you could wait until
after.
you could wait till your regular meeting in January to do that part if you chose to, or you could do a special one in the interim. Yeah. So it's really up to the board's discretion, sounds like.
Okay, so,
I mean, I'm prepared to vote on a motion now.
and Daniel, with your budget sense, you feel that that's a reasonable decision, because then we can go kind of off of that?
Yep.
No offense, Lori. But,
Lori is exactly for us.
I mean, Abby, and if you want to help too, just for the sake of thinking about it from a number standpoint, right? If you're talking 2 hours a week at $25 an hour, it's $50 a week. It's $200 a month for 6 months. So there's $1,200. And say they do the additional, say 8 to 10 hours a month. Say it's 10 hours, right? That's another $250 a month times 6. It's you know what I mean? You're talking about less than probably $5,000 overall.
Yeah, that's worth it.
okay, so we're looking for a motion for Greg to post for this position, is that what it is?
Well,
Yeah,
you're-
to post
you're-
and hire for a facility manager.
to approve the development of the position on a temporary basis, and then using this job description, something like that. And then Greg
Okay.
would then post for it and then hire.
So I motion for Greg Frost to hire for, was it the new position?
Yeah, geez.
Part-time maintenance?
No, facility
Facilities
manager.
This is a different thing.
Yes, so moved.
So the board, you are moving to hire a temporary facility manager position for the duration of this school year.
So moved. Did you get that, Daniel?
I got it.
All right, can we get a second?
A second.
Okay, any discussion? Crystal, go ahead.
It's not about this. I just remembered a question. I'm sorry. When you guys come out of executive session from the tuition request, I would like mine addressed individually, not as lumped, please.
Okay. Sure.
You got it, Crystal. So hearing no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion passes. There you go, Greg.
Thank you. I just sent you guys all the job description too. So you can check it out if you have any questions. And this way, if anyone asks you what it was for, you could share that out with them. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just to finish that thread though, do you want to put the building use, like conversation around building use on a future agenda? Do you want to talk about that today? Like how do you
I think we should talk about it today because everyone's tick-tocking away on time and we don't have a lot of it. So as much as, there's
I
some.
think that there's, I think there may be details though that we need to discuss specifically pertaining to that may take a little bit more time. And I would say that I think that we should either schedule another meeting, this week, next week, the week after, sometime in the next few weeks about that, so that we can have more dedicated discussion. If that makes sense, that's just how I feel about it.
So
And we have a lot to talk about today already, I think.
Yeah, and I was looking up details of how that would work. So I'd like a little more time.
Yeah, like come up with a plan, like, I don't know, maybe certain hours it can be accessed or some avenue to whatever. I don't know. We could save it for the full meeting, but I think there's a lot of details that would go into that.
Concern I have, guys, is that when we were looking at tuition requests, we haven't received any new tuition requests as of yet. So if families are interested in learning more about that, I think the sooner information can be started for them to at least think about, because they're going to have to families are going to have to make up some choices here. So
But just because they didn't submit anything doesn't mean that they don't just plan to go to Townsend either.
True.
Right.
That's true.
So there are model procedures, not policies, around building use. There are policies as well, but there are some procedures that I think Visbit might have around building use, like how to manage it, if you will, from an insurance perspective, mostly, that I could dig up and throw at you guys to look at in the next week or so.
Bob and I recently had this conversation, and we have some stuff I'd be happy to share some of that out with you as far as just putting something in place.
That would be
and that
fantastic.
way you kind of set up a system of, if people want to use it, what the steps are, and then that way you could just post that out and people could just, start to fill it out, and then it allows the facility person to coordinate around that.
And the sense isn't to limit it so much as to manage it from an insurance standpoint for your own liability as a board.
Yeah, and the school is also listed as a public library, so I don't know if anything changes along those lines, because
I didn't know that either.
yeah. So
Wait, I didn't hear what you said, Abby. What did you say? I'm sorry.
this elementary school is also listed as a public library. So there is some.
With no library.
What's that?
I said with no library.
Yeah, interesting, right? So that's a lot of stuff that's kind of in the pipeline as far as getting that piece in works of being a more robust library. But with those parameters, I didn't know how that would factor into insurance, because that could be something that if we manage and maintain and improve the library, is that something that kind of extends that coverage? I don't know. So just something to consider around that. So
We'll say if anyone in the public, I think this would be a good time to discuss, like, if people are interested, if anyone in the public wants to comment on, what they would propose, or what their interest is. Just an open invitation.
For right now, or
Yeah, right now. I mean, I support discussing it, not necessarily voting on it and, going through the motions. Literally.
but if it's not on the agenda, is that?
So we're kind of piggybacking off of finding and filling the position that we had added for Greg, and what that would look like in interest in using the building during this time.
I see. Okay.
So I think it is reasonable, since we added it on there right now. Crystal, we've heard from you for a few times, so I'm going to hear from Michael Pelton first, and then we'll go back to you unless your hand's still up. Michael Pelton?
I just wanted to comment that there's a community member that has started a Facebook homeschool group, effectively looking to see if people are interested in starting homeschooling and getting together and so forth. And I think that it would be productive and appropriate to have access to the school for a location for those folks to meet.
Give me a better sense of that. What's the interest been like, Michael?
Well, I haven't looked in a day or two, but I know there's a potential of at least 4 kids. I don't know any more than that. So
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Crystal, is your hand up?
It is. This is not about what you're discussing. An email just came out for an event at the school tomorrow night. And I think the visit to Townsend got rescheduled for tomorrow, but I could be incorrect.
So there are 2 events tomorrow. One is at 4:30 at Townsend School, and one is at 6:30 here at the school.
Oh, okay.
So the 4:30 is the tour that was postponed for Monday, and the 6:30 is a potluck and concert and celebration evening.
Perfect.
So
come support the kiddos. I think it's going to be really nice.
All right.
Before I take off, I sent you all the links for the South Burlington and the Visbit stuff, so the board has those.
Awesome.
Thanks,
Thank you very much, Greg.
Thank you.
All right. So any more discussion on potential use of the building and what could be used for?
Oh, I had a thought about that. I don't know if, again, without looking at any guidelines or policies and procedures surrounding it, it was kind of a personal thought. I work remotely, and sometimes I think it would be really nice to have an office to go to and just not be in my house and sit and work with reliable internet. That was my thought. I don't know if any other people in Windham work remotely that would benefit from having the ability to work outside of the home. But I think it's something worth talking about if there's interest.
Yeah, I work remotely, and yeah, I agree. That would be nice if I could step outside the house sometimes.
Yeah.
All right. I don't see any other hands. So thank you very much, Greg. We super appreciate you. And my gosh, have happy holidays.
Thanks, you too.
Thanks, Greg.
Thank you.
All right, moving along, Superintendent Report.
So before we go on, how do you want to proceed with that? Do you want to look at the stuff that he sent you first and then let me know that you want a special meeting? Do you want to table it until your next meeting? Or how do you want to?
With what Greg just sent?
About the building use stuff. Like, do you?
I think we need to digest what Greg sent and any other information surrounding like insurance concerns, et cetera, before we have anything in place.
So I'll just wait to hear from the board as to whether or not it's a special meeting conversation, or whether it's a regular meeting in January.
We add it to the January.
Yep.
agenda.
All right. I'll wait for your instruction. All right. Superintendent's report. I did send out the cabinet report a week and a half, 2 weeks ago now. And I'm just checking in with board members to find out whether the level of detail that's there, it seems like it's actually gotten bigger since the beginning of the fall. And so my team obviously is working really hard to try to articulate the things that they're doing. So I just wanted to check in and make sure that the level of detail is either, it's in the just right Goldilocks kind of a thing, or whether it's too much or too less, and figure out if I need to make any adjustments. But the report is the report, so if people have questions on that, they can shoot me a question, but just checking in on the level of detail.
I like the level of detail.
Yeah.
And it's a clean format.
Yeah,
So it's not overwhelming. Bullet points are helpful.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Russ, I see your hands raised.
Yeah, I've been listening to the conversation going on, and my observation is that when most people homeschool their children, they school them at home. They don't ask to borrow the local elementary school that's temporarily closed to school their children. Down here in South Windham at the church, they had homeschool. They used the church building, and they had 15 to 20 students in there. They didn't ask to come up and use the school in Windham. They did them at home or in their church. So what I'm wondering is, why is there such an interest in being able to use the school building for homeschooling when, in essence, the term homeschooling means you school them at home? Occasionally, you might go to local school for a math class, or you might go for some physical ed or some art. But in essence, most of the time, you school them at home, not at the local school that isn't in current use. So I would caution about extending the use of the school building to those individuals with the 4 children, and I know who the families are, that want to use the school as their home school rather than their homes. Thank you.
So Russ, is your concern just pedantic, or do you have other concerns that about the building, about the use? Is it something?
It's a liability issue.
Okay.
When the building is used for homeschooling, the liability comes onto the town. When the kids are schooled at home, if they break their arm by falling off the swing, as a student did recently at the school, it's not the school's liability, it's their home school. And I just think that I can just see this, it's going to be called the Edelman and Pendleton Homeschooling School. So, but anyway, I just think that it's a sneaky way of trying to get people schooled other than at their home.
Did you happen to hear the part of the meeting where we were going to discuss policies around it and look into
I heard that discussion, but I wanted to have my input before discussion started.
Okay, so you understand that we're going to look into all of those policies, or we're going to look into.
I fully understand that.
Okay.
But I see where it's going. I see where it's going.
Thanks.
Sarah?
I figured since I'm getting called out directly, I should have some sort of input on this situation. Russ, how long has it been since your children have been in grade school? 70 years, given your age, maybe? I'm not really sure.
That's immaterial since I'm 81 years old.
My point still stands. Anyways,
But you're not a resident of Windham.
my child is a student here, so that means I have more skin in the game than you have hair on your head. Can I continue? Thank you. What I'm saying is modern homeschool doesn't take place necessarily just at the home, especially because socialization is a big thing that comes with homeschooling. This building is not just a school, it's a public building. So maybe the pod down at the South Windham Church didn't ask to use the school because school was probably still in session. Therefore, it would make the situation a little bit more tricky to have homeschool kids be here. Also, like you said, kids can go to the public school for math class or whatever, which means there is a commingling and a dual usage from homeschool and public school. Why am I speaking on this? Because my kid has been homeschooled and has been public school. Therefore, I know a little bit about a thing or two with this. Lastly, I will say this. Again, the building is a school, and while it's closed, it's a building, a public building, where community members can come convene on weekends, because we've done it as part of the Friends of Windham Schoolhouse. We've had events here. It is a public building. So if there's a homeschool group who wants to convene here twice a week in a public building, that's okay too. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. So, anything else from you, Bob?
Nope.
Okay. Second draft of the budget.
All right, so I have a presentation to share. Let's just see here, make sure I get the right thing going on. Okay, I'm gonna come up there, so Abby, I'm gonna just...
We're gonna sit in the grown-up chair?
No, I just wanna be up here so I can point to things if I need to. Can you see through me?
Sure.
Or do you wanna move a little? Okay, so what I wanted to talk about today was the preliminary tax rates. And so this is all within Act 127, which is a new law starting on July 1st. So Act 127 is an act relating to improving student equity by adjusting the school funding formula and providing education quality and funding oversight. Okay, so this is very important. We cannot compare equalized pupils any longer to long-term weighted ADM. Long-term weighted ADM is the new terminology that we're going to use, and also how the students are weighted. So ADM is average daily membership. Remind me if I don't tell you all the acronyms. So ADM is the number of publicly funded resident students as a 20-day full-time equivalent from the 11th day through the 30th day of the school year. So a student has to be in the school for 20 days to be counted as a 1. Okay. And then the long-term average is still that 2-year rolling. So we're used to that. That did not change. All right. So the largest factor throughout the state of gain in ADM is the poverty or free and reduced weights. Okay. So you can see that the AOE has converted the fiscal year 24 equalized pupils to long-term weighted ADM. So this is how, if Act 127 were in effect for fiscal year 24, the students would have been weighted using the new weights. So you can see there was a gain there. The 32.13 for fiscal year 25 will change. Okay, this is not set in stone. We're only on version 2 from the AOE, so probably have at least another 3 versions to go as the census data comes in, because remember, this is a statewide system. So there was a net increase in your student count, long-term weighted ADM, of 4.01 students, basically. So that is good news. All right, so this was the proposed budget. I did not make any changes. The board did not direct me to make any changes to the budget as presented the last time. So we have the year-over-year increases of $123,000, up 26%, and we have a loss of revenue. So the loss of revenue is in that small schools grant. So that went away with the new weighting, because now you get a small schools weight and also a sparsity weight. So those two are picked up there. So your education spending, the amount of money that Windham is going to ask the state for, is up 51.32%. Okay, so to give you some reference, the yield, the December 1st letter that went out had that ed spending number at about 12%. So you can see that, Windham is pretty far over that. So what were the major budget increases in that budget? So the teaching and teaching principal staff stayed the same. We had some salary and benefit increases that I applied, 16.4% in healthcare alone. So just to keep that in the back of your mind. Added a library position at a 0.10, which is a half a day. Which is required by EQS, which is Education Quality Standards. And we added music instruction, we added curriculum. There was some additional time, which is happening now for the administrative assistants for the food service program, so we needed to put it in the next year's budget. The assessment increases from WCSU, which include academic support and special education. The transfer to building reserve was also increased $45,000, and then just adjustments to actual and inflationary factors. Okay, so this is Act 127, the law and the hold harmless piece. Okay, so you probably have been hearing about this 5% and the 10%, and so I'm going to spell it out a little bit for you. So this is a grid that was given to us by the AOE, and it's saying that if your tax rate is less than 5% from your fiscal year 24 district tax rate, and your per pupil, remember that per pupil spending is less than 10%, then your tax rate is as calculated and there's no tax review. Okay? If your tax rate is more than 5% and you're less than 10% per pupil spending, then the tax rate is capped at 5% and there's no tax review. But as we're going to see, Windham is going to fall into this third column over here, which is the tax rate increase is more than 5% and your per pupil spending is going to be more than 10% based on this current budget. So what happens? So the district tax rate will still be capped at 5% and then a tax rate review is held. So, and what happens is if the budget increase is deemed justified, the district rate is capped at 5% and that's it, right? If the increase is determined not to be for good cause, the district rate is as calculated. So you lose that 5% cap. All right. So this is the potential combined tax rate before the CLA. So we're not going to talk about CLA until the very end, okay? So your district tax rate for fiscal year 24 was $1.42. And this was the split between elementary and secondary here. And this year it's $1.87 based on the budget presented. So you can see that's, a pretty healthy increase, 44 cents, 31%. And your cost per student is increased from 13,000 to almost 18,000, or 32.4%, which is over the 10%, right? So you're in a review situation here, and your tax rate is over 5%. All right. Next slide. Yep. So what does the 5% look like, right? So here's what it would look like if it were capped at 5%, which it would be, unless you didn't pass the review, in which case it would be revert back. All right, so let's keep going. All right, so here's where we get into the CLA. Last year, the CLA was very low. As we know, there was a reappraisal. We don't know what the CLA is right now. That information won't come out until probably January 15th at the latest, probably between the 1st and the 15th. But we know that we can estimate somewhere around 90% because we know that you were all reappraised. So what does that look like when we run that scenario through here? So the first, before the 5% cap is applied, right? You're looking, remember that $1.87, run it through the 90%, you're at 208. So your tax rate is up 7 cents or 3.4%. All right, after the 5% is applied, you're at $1.49. Now your tax rate is $1.67. Your tax rate is down 34 cents. This is the crazy funding formula of Vermont. So your tax rate is actually down if the 5% cap is in place. All right, let's go on to the next slide.
So despite the increases in budget and with the new ADM and with the tax rate cap, we'd actually be under what our previous tax rate was, right? Assuming
right. Right. Remember the cap, right?
But their values went up.
Right. Yeah, your home values went up, so that has to be taken into consideration as well. But you are correct, but it is capping you, so it's not giving you a true tax rate, right? So we have to keep that in mind.
Well, and that's true for tax rates, right? For the majority of us, I think it's reported about 2/3 of most folks in Vermont do not pay, the established tax rate, but have a tax rate credit of some sort.
That's true, Daniel. What I was referring to is that cap is artificially lowering your tax rate. But you're absolutely right. 2/3 of Vermont pay based on income or income and value versus straight value.
Okay.
So the board needs to, think about these things and make some decisions as they approve a budget, right? So does the board want to cut the presented budget in order to get under the 10% review process? So you would have to cut roughly $98,000. Okay. Which you have some surplus you could use, and you could take out the transfer. That would get you down to about 14%. So you would need to come up with another $24,000 to cut out of the budget. So some of the things you added would need to be cut back. And I'm not sure that we could really cut library since it really is supposed to be in there. So those are some things to discuss.
So that's taking out the building,
Yes, the transfer.
the transfer to the building,
Yes,
and it's also using the surplus.
correct.
And that's our current surplus from FY 23, not 24, that we expect to come in, right?
That is true, yes, and it's because the surplus has to be audited to use it to offset taxes. And you've committed $30,000, which you probably won't end up using, but you did commit $30,000 of your surplus for this current year that we're in.
Okay.
So does the board have a strategic plan for what happens when the 5% tax goes away, right? So the law says is that from 2024 through 2029 that you can use the cap, or districts can use this cap. But what happens at the end of that, right? So if your budget is increasing a modest 3%, right? Your budget's going up year after year. And the way the cap works is that the new base is the cap from the previous year, right? So essentially you could be increasing your budget 25 or your tax rate 25% over 5 years and then be hitting that 6th year with that, right? Because so you just have to think about that, right? Is that what you want to use as your strategic plan? And then some other things that we talked about was, does the board want to ask the voters to establish a building reserve fund? So currently your reserve fund is for the bus, it's transportation. Do you want to establish a building reserve fund? That would have to be an article on your warning.
I have a question. If it's deemed that the public can use the building, does the board or the people in charge of the building have the right to ask the public for a nominal fee that could then go into offsetting this budget experience?
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
And then does the board want to ask the voters to move any operational surplus to the building reserve fund? So there will be, based on the circumstances now, it looks like you will have a surplus at the end of this year. So do you want to ask the voters to move that into a building reserve? So those are some...
Do you have any estimation on that surplus?
Well, I think when you and I looked at it, we were like 143, something like that. But then we have to take the $30,000 into account. So, we're talking from 100 to probably 110 or 15. Could be more, depending on, it could be more depending on the next few decisions.
Thank you.
So on that, and I know we were talking about the bus. Wasn't there maintenance that we need to get done on the bus, and was that ever done? And does that mean we deplenish the bus funds to get that done? I know the back of the bus there's I don't know if it's the door that's a little bit needs some paint or something.
I think the bus fund is to purchase a new bus at the end of this bus's useful life, I think. I don't know if they use it for maintenance, do they?
No.
We usually build that in a local budget, yeah.
There's still some maintenance budget in your current budget this year to work on the bus, yeah.
So what you're talking about is a different, not taking bus funds for building, that's something separate?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Making a second bucket for buildings, and the bus bucket still stays there.
Because the public established the transportation fund to replace the bus, right? And so for a long time, I think it was about $5,000 that was added every year. And then recently, the Windham board started adding about $10,000 to that. So, you know, when it came time to buy a bus, there was some money there to offset the cost of the bus. But the voters established that. So it really can't be used for any other thing besides that. So that's why I'm saying the board should probably ask the voters to establish a building reserve fund. Okay, next slide. So those are some things to be thinking about from the board's point of view. So I'll post this for you probably, well, it'll be at least in the Windham Central board site, but this is a great resource if you have questions about the pupil weights. It really goes through, you can click on it, Bob, and let's see where it takes us. It should take us to the document. Right, so this is an executive summary of the change in the formula. And then it's a live document because it has links below that has frequently asked questions. So I would encourage you to look at that if you have questions about the funding formula itself. So I think that's it. Is that the end? It is the end.
That's
all right,
the end.
That's the end. So do you have any questions about the way this is playing out? I think there are some things to think about. The board needs to think about. They need to think strategically. They need to think about the review that we don't really know a lot about, other than it's 2 business managers, 2 superintendents, and I believe somebody from the Secretary of Ed's department to review the budget. And I don't know, they may have questions, that type of thing. But that is something to consider. Consider whether or not to try to get under that 10%. It's another thing. I do think that most of what you're trying to accomplish, you would be cutting. So that would, maybe not be your first choice. I think somebody had a question.
Oh, go ahead, Russ.
Perhaps it was Joyce.
No, it's Russ. I'm stunned at the number of students that have been adjusted from 2024 to 2025. We have 12 to 15 actual kids in the school, and through magic, you end up with 32. And I'm stunned by this. So I'm going to look very carefully at that Section 127 legislation to see what it is.
Poverty levels.
I know it's poverty levels, but it's, I've looked at the poverty levels and done some calculations, and I don't see too many families in Windham that fall within that category. So I'm going to look at that very carefully. Thank you.
I expect nothing less. I think that, this is from the census. Like I said, it'll change. It may go down. I don't think it'll go up from this number. It may go down as things shake out. But the weights are applied by the AOE, and this was like I said, the second version of what we had. And I know that there are only 15 to 18 bodies necessarily, but we're talking about adding for every free and reduced lunch student that qualifies for free and reduced lunch. We're talking about adding 1.03 is the new weight. The old weight for that was 0.21 or 0.25, so significantly higher. And the other, I just think that because the weights are different, and you have to remember that the small schools weight is also helping. You lost your small schools grant, so basically with the small schools weight, theoretically you're back to even again, right? So then any additional weights are going to push you up.
And I do have a comment for Russ. I do have some census data on hand, and at least over 70% have income under $99,000, and that when you go down to $50,000 to $75,000, it's about 50%. And so it's not necessarily unbelievable that out of the 184 families in Windham, at least based on tax returns from the Vermont tax site, 400 to 500 people, 450 people, that there would be significant gains there for the long ADM.
And I don't disagree either. What I'm looking at is, I went to the national poverty level for families for 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 members, and I did some calculations, and I looked at a report that I get from the listers about the supplemental payment that's made by the state to certain families, and I compared those families that have children in the school, and there's only 3 of them that would have possibly qualified for that low and income adjustment. It's just, to me, it's amazing that the number came out so high.
Brett, as soon as I get the third version, there's actually a sheet that shows exactly how each weight is applied. And I will send that to you. I was hoping maybe we'd have a third version for tonight, but we didn't. So once we get that, I will do up that sheet, and it'll really, I think, answer your questions, particularly Russ, is no. Because it actually applies Windham's through the sheet.
Oh, I got you.
So, yeah. So I think it will help to explain some of it.
Well, I have a follow-up question to that. The how Russ was commenting how the pupils went like exponentially increased to 30 something. Was that in the next fiscal year or over the next 5 years? Like, because you had mentioned between 2024 and 2029 and what the board might do after that plan comes into place. So I was wondering if that increase was actually over the next 5 years.
Nope, that is the increase just from this census that was just taken.
Okay.
And the change in the law.
Got it.
Right. So the big one of the big factors, like I said, is the free and reduced. It's also the way they're collecting the data for free and reduced is also different than how they collected it before.
Sure.
And all the school districts across the state are seeing an increase in the free and reduced numbers and weights.
Okay. Thanks.
Yes.
Crystal?
Lori, you talked about the surplus, and in previous meetings, it was discussed that the surplus was going to have to be used for the floors that have to be replaced. So was this surplus that's being discussed, were the floors taken into consideration?
And I believe it was carpet, not floors. And we do have it actualized in the budget currently for replacing the carpet in, I believe, 3 rooms and cutting out and dealing with the asbestos. So it wouldn't be a part of the surplus. It's already in the budget.
Did that answer your question, Crystal?
Yes, but I thought that you guys needed to use the surplus because it was going to cost like $60,000 to do these floors.
So what Dan is referring to is that transfer to reserves, that $55,000. That's what's in the current budget that was presented last month. That number would be moved over to capital and then used for the floors.
Thank you.
Thank you, Crystal. And Is that it for the Lori show, or are we?
That's pretty much it. I think that, the board does need to make some decisions. They need to think about, what happens. The other issue is the yield. So when I was talking about, let me go back to that. Oh, no, right here.
Oh, and before you're done, Michael Pelton will have a question.
Okay. So when I was talking about the education spending being up 51.32%, and when the December 1st letter came out, it was the yield was based on an estimate of 12%. So think of it this way, if everybody in the state, all the school districts are doing what Windham is doing and increasing their budget by 51%, then the yield is going to have to drop. So, which is fine if it drops and you're capped at the 5%, right? It could drop to $1, and as long as you're capped at that 5%, your tax rate isn't going to go up. However, if you don't pass the review and the yield drops and you're not capped at 5%, now you could be, your tax rate could skyrocket. So there's a lot of strategy here and a lot of risk. And I'm having this conversation with all of the districts.
And just based on your estimation of this tax review, and I know there's a lot of details, and I appreciate that hasn't come out, but just based on our budget, the increases that we've done, I think primarily it's music, PE, library, some capital fund. Do you think that would fall under at least in your personal opinion, to fair budget increases? At least the library is absolutely necessary, but the rest are
certainly the library, the salary and benefits, all of those things. Those are there. The library needed to be added. The salary and benefits increases are just normal every year increases. So I don't think that any reviewer would have an issue with that. Potentially, maybe the transfer to capital, but I don't know why they would necessarily. But I can't say, and I don't want to give an opinion about this because I don't even know what the review looks like. So to give an opinion about something I don't know what looks like is, not fair to anybody.
And there would be a certain amount of communication with the tax review, correct?
I would assume so. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we could possibly have a defensible position to talk towards whatever commission.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Okay, Michael Pelton.
I think Crystal brings up a pretty good point. I think we have an opportunity to deal with the asbestos in the floor when the building's not occupied, and potentially when there's some room for contractors to get in there and flexibility for them. I'm wondering if it might be a good idea to use some of the surplus instead of taking transfer to capital for the building reserve, and just at this point use some of the surplus and get the floors taken care of. It would sort of take care of two birds with one stone there. You'd reduce your budget by $45,000 or whatever, $55,000, and you're taking care of the floors, which you need to deal with anyway.
So if I can respond to that. Michael, that's an excellent point. I mean, the board could choose in this current fiscal year to overspend their budget. I mean, they can approve to spend money on the floor. That is their right to do. So
I think it's reasonable given, with the cap and with the CLA being as high as it is, and with our ADM being as high as it is, we could, potentially get away with more budget, towards a number of things, right? More towards flooring, more towards more programs, higher rate for a potential teaching principal coming in, I think there's a lot of good uses, plus a pretty sizable increase to our surplus. You know, I think all of that needs to be considered by all of us in the board.
I have a question. Lori, I don't know if you already said this, but is it possible for you to send this PowerPoint that you're presenting so that I can review it later?
100, yes, I will. I'll post it to where, or Sue will post it because I don't know how, to the board, to the WCSU board website.
And I can ask her
Thank
to
you.
send it to the board as well after she does it.
Right, yeah, we'll send it to the board as well. Sorry.
So, I was gonna ask for clarifying as you guys continue the conversation. Lori, what's the deadline for the Windham board to adopt a budget and to have some final decisions?
Right, so really by January, you need to approve a budget because there needs to be a 30-day warning before the vote on town meeting day. Hope you get your...
Thank you very much.
All right, Crystal? And then
So, this is not going to be a popular opinion, but it's definitely something that's been on my mind. You guys are technically awaiting to hear from the AOE if they are going to allow you to be operational next year. And I know these are what ifs and we don't have a crystal ball, but they could say, okay, you guys can be operational, but you have to merge with your neighboring district. So that would change the budget drastically. And again, I don't have a crystal ball, but in 2018, that board said if we are made to merge with the West River District, we are closing the school. So there's a few different budgets that could be possible here. A Windham budget, Windham added to the West River budget, and a non-operational budget.
yes, Bob.
Just a quick clarification of what Crystal is, I'm not sure exactly what she's alluding to as far as the AOE and next year. The action that the board took at the last meeting and the affirmation letter that they received from the secretary is only about this year.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing on the table as far as next year with the AOE outside of a potential lawsuit. So just want to make sure people are clear on that point.
And I just want to clarify for the public. So Crystal, I'm not sure what you heard last meeting, but it was never on the table to fully close the school nor merge. The AOE wanted us to have a plan for pre-approval, and so we supplied that plan. Of course, the AOE is going through their decision, but the decision was never around merging our school, and the decision was never around whether or not we would be there for FY25. So I just want to clarify for everyone.
Yes, I understand that, but I also understand that the AOE could say, this is our decision.
Well, that's a pretty big hypothetical. I mean, technically the AOE could shut down every school, but it's not exactly on the docket.
Russ?
Sorry, is it Joyce or Russ?
Either one of you, I'll take it.
Yeah.
You have a question about the library, Russ or Joyce?
Tell you what, you can take your hand down. We can pass later.
Thank you. Thank you, Dan. It's Joyce. I just wanted to respond to your comments earlier about the library and the inclusion of that amount in the budget. I understand that the library specialist was added recently, but I believe, and I'm not certain, but I do believe it was mandated prior. So if it was mandated previously and we just ignored it, do we have any grounds to ask for consideration or an exclusion from that budget requirement? Thank you.
Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, so that requirement is part of the education quality standards, which I think came out in 2016.
I think so.
Maybe even the year before that. It is possible to request a waiver with the AOE from elements of that. I've never done one. I've never seen one. I don't know what that is, but it's up to the AOE to make that determination whether they accept the waiver. So that's how the process might work.
Okay.
And to my knowledge, Windham has not asked for a waiver despite not having one.
All right.
Yeah, I don't know if they did or not. Food service, I know they did.
So we have moved on from, are we done with setting the tuition rate? Is that what we're on to?
Well, I guess I'm looking for any type of, what does the board want to see at the next budget meeting for next month? Do they want to consider any of these things? How are you directing me to present the budget next time?
Yeah, I would like to, at the very least, meet with you, Lori, again and go through the budget. Especially given executive sessions and decisions tonight. Yeah, I think that'd be appropriate.
So, but unless the board is going to authorize Daniel to direct Lori after those meetings, the whole board should really take action on what they're directing Lori to do.
Right.
So it's kind of either one or the other. Unless you want to be the exact same budget that you bring for adoption in January, which you could do.
Right. If you don't want to make any changes, then you can just say no changes, and that's what I will bring forth at the January meeting.
So Daniel, when are you and Lori gonna collaborate again? Because then if we do still need to have another special meeting, maybe we can present and tack on to that meeting some more discussion about what you kind of gather from that collaboration there and provide some guidance on what your thoughts are. Is that something that's possible within that timeline, or?
I think so. You'll have a third draft relatively soon, you said, Lori?
I would want to wait until the CLA came out, and then we had at least one more version of the long-term weighted ADM students. So it would be mid-January. It would be just before your next meeting. Just before. The week prior, probably.
So a special meeting in between doesn't sound like it's going to have any more information from the state, is what I'm hearing.
Okay.
Okay, so we can look over the current budget, any changes that I think we could make in there, and then especially towards the strategic plan that you have up, I'd like to look into that more. And then, if we're going to have a discussion about building use, that was a special meeting you were thinking, Abby, right?
Yes, and that, try to make one meeting instead of 3 would be nice.
Yeah.
But.
And you could do.
No, I think it makes sense. I'd like to dig in a little more. So yeah, if you want to meet, say after the first, within that week, if we could do something like that, if you're able, and then we can have a special meeting, somewhere between then and the next regular meeting. I think that would make sense.
Why don't I contact you when I get the CLA? And then we'll set up a meeting, and then we can see where it falls, because you could do another special meeting after after your regular meeting. You would that next week you could do another meeting, because I think you have to warn by the 3rd or something, right? Whenever town meeting day is what, the 5th?
Yeah.
Right, so you have to be 30 days prior to that you have to sign your warning, I think.
Would we have updated information on the yield by then? Do you know?
The yield is up for grabs until the legislators depart in May or June.
Beautiful.
So that's, we
Thanks for
don't
that.
know how that will affect anything.
Okay. Yeah, no, I would like to see the CLA, see some more concrete numbers, but yeah, I think that makes sense. And then we can have it after the regular meeting.
Okay.
So,
Does that work, Kathy?
yes, that does.
So
After the regular meeting.
So at that meeting, you would have to be potentially adopting a budget, determining whether or not you're going to have on the warning establishing a building reserve fund.
Yep.
And potentially a warning to move operational surplus into one of your funds.
Capital, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Who typically does your warning?
Who typically does the warning?
Writes it, yeah.
We're not sure.
Was it the board chair, or was it our office, or was it someone at the town?
You're looking like you don't know.
No, I don't. I mean, I could write.
No, I just didn't know. We don't know either. Maybe Bill did it. We don't know.
Okay.
So.
I mean, I can reach out to Beth too and see if she would know too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or you can see who did it.
Yeah. Perfect. So, are we moving on to? So the tuition, that's what's going to get moved.
Nope, we can do tuition.
We can do that now.
Yes.
Okay. So, second draft that'll be special. All right, let's move on to set tuition rate for SY25.
All right, so this is required by the Agency of Education. This is if any student wanted to come to Windham School and from outside of the district, they would pay tuition. So you're setting that tuition rate, which I'm recommending $18,200. It was about 4% less last year. I'm just using an inflation factor to go up on that. So I need a motion to approve that as the fiscal year 25 tuition rate for Windham School District.
How much up is that from last year?
4%.
4%. Michael Pelton?
How does that compare to other area schools?
Yeah, so that's what I try to do is keep it in the realm of other schools. So, obviously your cost per student is a little different this year or for fiscal year 25 anyway because of the new weighting. But that's basically what I'm doing across the board is like a 4% increase. So staying right in there. I believe it might even be the same as West Rivers, so I'd have to look.
Yeah, ask Lori. This might be a potential stupid question, but SY is school year, right? So what's a difference between like FY and SY?
Your fiscal year runs July 1st through June 30th, and the school year is, August, whatever. So it's the same thing. So it's SY is 24-25.
It's inside the Venn diagram.
Fiscal year 25 because it ends June 30th, 25.
Okay, I was just making sure we're talking the same. Appreciate it.
Give a hand up, Abby.
Go ahead, Russ or Joyce.
Yeah, just a point of clarification. Are you talking about getting students to come to Windham and having them pay tuition? Is that part of this discussion? Am I understanding it correctly?
That's correct, Russ. It's basically the board has to set a tuition rate or it reverts back to last year's tuition rate. So this is if a student outside of the district wanted to come to Windham School.
Every school district has to do this every year.
I understand that, but that does not have any impact on our average daily membership or our long-term average daily membership. It's not counted in that, just like homeschool children are not counted.
That's
Well,
correct. The same district has the count.
The district does, but not the individual school system, Windham.
Well, if they're within that FTE, right? That counting period,
No, nope. If a school
they'll be
district
outside.
tuition, they get to keep the ADM.
Gotcha. Okay.
So in other words, if we had 3 kids from Chester and 2 from Andover or whatever, they would not add to our long-term average, long-term membership numbers and reduce our taxes.
That's right.
Correct.
You get revenue in the form of tuition payments.
Okay. So in effect.
So, follow-up question from Joyce. How does that affect the use of the building? If we have students from outside who might want to send their children to the school, we've talked about homeschooling.
This is for SY25.
I'm sorry, Dan, thank you, but I haven't finished my question. We have talked about students from outside. We've talked about students homeschooling. How does that impact the viability of the use of the building if we're going to have students from outside coming in while we have a temporarily non-operational school? How can we conceive of even including students in if we don't have an operational school?
So
And if Lori or Bob could respond, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
So Joyce, I think what you're maybe missing is every district has to set the tuition rate for every year. This is not about the 6-month window that we're dealing with. This is school year, what do we call it? Fiscal year 25. If during that school year a family from outside wanted to tuition, we have to set that number. That's all that it is. It's not looking at tuitioning outside kids into the school while we're figuring all this stuff out. That's not the timeline. It's next year. So does that make sense?
Yes, as long as it's clear that it is not for this current school year while the school is not operational. Thank you.
Yeah, we don't have a teacher, so I don't think that would work out too well.
Yeah, the answer is it would have 0 impact.
So I'm not sure who's answering. Rory answered, Dan answered. Everybody answered. I'm not quite sure if we're in consensus, but
yeah,
I think make that point known. Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce.
Thanks, Joyce.
So, Daniel, what's your thought on that particular tuition? Is that what we're acting on
We
now?
have no
or-
motion yet.
Yes.
We had a lot of conversation, but no motion.
Yeah, right. So,
so it doesn't include like a typical inflation, Lori?
Yes.
Okay.
what was the amount? 18?
18.2.
Yeah, I think it's fair.
1,200?
How is the inflation calculated?
I just use 4%. And I'm also looking at what are other schools around charging. So, you know, I'm not putting a lot of thought into it just because I think that you want to stay competitive with other schools.
So even if like the CPI index was higher, we should probably just stay lockstep with everyone.
That would be my recommendation. I mean,
Yeah.
the question has come up before because, you know, some districts are, you know, spending well over $20,000 per pupil, but only charging, you know, a certain rate. And, you know, it really comes down to if a parent is choosing a school and they have to pay above and beyond what the school district is going to pay, you know, they're going to shop around, so.
No, that makes sense. Yeah, and Abby, to answer your question, I agree.
Okay, so I move to approve the school year 25 tuition rate of $18,200. Can I get a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Tuition is set, $18,200.
You guys have any more questions for Lori before she goes home?
Thank you, Lori.
Yes, no problem.
You've done enough. Thank you.
No problem.
You're great. Always.
Thanks. Hey, and you
Thank you, Lori.
On a related note, if you know anyone that wants to be a business manager starting next July 1, let me know.
Don't remind us.
Tough shoes.
It's very tough shoes.
Really small shoes, really.
But tough.
Well, happy holidays to you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Have a lovely holiday yourselves.
Thank you for your continued patience.
Hey, just the facts, man. That's all I got for you.
Take care.
All
Bye-bye.
right, bye, Lori. So moving on to strategic planning. So this is an area to discuss, future grant work and stuff like that, which has all been put on hold because of the ever-changing situation. But that is something that will continue to come back up as deadlines are coming up for things. So, that was something we probably could have asked Lori. I think the AOE had a grant for art. I don't know if we had got anything to do with that, but it was for around $6,000, I believe.
Would that be a question for Liz?
Could be. There's just, so that's that portion on here. So I don't know. I think it'll become a lot more detailed, especially after we can get through and start understanding really the steps and the plans going forward. So right now it's just kind of mumbled, unless there's anything that Rory or Daniel want to add to that category.
Is this the strategic plan for the budget or just overall?
Overall, like strategic planning, long-term vision stuff, what we're looking at to be able to kind of slate and chip away at and make sure if we are getting grants, we can possibly stack them with the different grant efforts going on within the community. Lots of stuff like that would be beneficial. So, but also other ideas that may need to come up as we're moving along with stuff. So, anything you guys can think of?
I'm curious, about the survey that we were going to previously send. I know it was predicated on our teaching principle, but I think it still might be a good opportunity. I mean, looking
it's broad enough where I don't think it has anything to do with the teaching principle. I think it's a broad enough general. So at least the one that I produced is a general survey that I don't think we need to have any teaching principle involvement for. It's more of a community parent survey. Is that the one that you're talking about, Dan?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I think I'm interested in what folks are interested in as far as like services, programs, et cetera.
Yeah, me too. And I would love to roll that out as soon as we're ready.
How long do you think we would be ready?
I mean, it's ready. My thought is, with the transition with the school and all of the discussion with tuitions, is it too much to be looking at today and maybe schedule it for our first meeting in January because the kids will have been transitioned by then?
Yeah.
And I think that we will have more bandwidth for something like that. Nice. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah. That answer questions there.
Well, I just wanted to add that if some really great things are brought to the table, it would be more attractive for other families who might want to tuition their kids to our school. So there's
that would be for next year.
Yeah, for next year, there's like all this potential and space. We just have to combine and collaborate our collective energies for the greater good instead of pissing on each other all the time.
Yes.
Okay.
But I think that we could just, maybe I think this is important enough that we should have a dedicated meeting or a bigger slot to discuss this after the kids transition. But I agree with you completely.
Is it possible to send out the survey prior to our regular meeting and maybe get
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Yeah.
Like, kind of my line of thinking is if me and Lori are talking budget, after
Yeah.
somebody comes in, we have some better ideas of more concrete numbers. I mean, the budget, we're looking at a 5% cap with a higher ADM and a lot of headwinds here. So we could potentially put that into the budget. And if there were things that people were interested in, I'd like to know.
I think that's a really great point.
What's the survey that you guys are talking about? I'm sorry.
So it's something that we had discussed. Gosh, I don't know. It was late summer, early fall. That was basically geared towards, I don't want to say rebranding, but refreshing and revamping the vision of the school and getting parent and community input on programming that may be beneficial or think maybe things that they don't want. Just sort of a way of gauging interest and getting people excited to, contribute even just an idea.
Okay. And who would be allowed access to said survey?
We'll make
sure. Well, it was initially planned to be open to the community and the parents. So
was it the same survey or two surveys?
I think, I only worked on one survey, but I feel like there was another survey.
Yeah, I feel like there was one that was going to go to specifically to the families of students, and then there was going to be another for the community that Ellen can put out on a blast, so that it was really, informative community consensus as to what. But we had so much other transitioning going on that it did not happen. So.
It's been ready to go though for a while.
Well, I mean, I would say go ahead and blast it, Rory. What you have at least to, if you feel that that's what you have is geared towards not just families but also to the community, then we can probably forward it to Ellen for her to forward as well to the community email blast.
And that would be
I can do that. Yep, I think it'd be great to have it sent out now for discussion at our next meeting. And I think that it should be open to the community, not just parents. Of course, I think, parents are a little bit more acutely invested, but as taxpayers, the community members may want to offer input and perhaps even volunteer, or maybe they have an idea that we haven't heard of. I think this is a really good opportunity for people to just bring their best self to the students. I don't know how else to say it, but I think it's a good opportunity for everybody, even if you don't have a kid in school.
Totally agree. Okay, can you send us a draft of it?
Yeah, I thought I sent it to you way back when, but I will definitely send it out. I'll send it out again.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
And then we'll have either Russ or Joyce, and then it'll be Michael. And Joyce, if Joyce is still there, Russ, I was hoping she could answer whether or not she was able to find the document regarding the district work that she's volunteered to get from the town office, if that was ever located.
What is the question, Abby? I'm sorry.
At the last meeting, you had offered to find documentation at the town office regarding the district, the school district. I wasn't sure.
I did. Thank you, Abby. I did try to find out. I could not find out anything. I had meant, and I apologize, but I had meant to reach out to Lori Garland, asked for further clarification about specific she needed, because as far as a school incorporation or anything of that nature, I could not locate anything. So thank you for the reminder. I had intended to reach out to her, but I just hadn't gotten back to it, but thank you.
And then you had a question, maybe?
Yeah, the other question I had for Lori, if she still's on, is the long-term membership of 32 a number that we can work with going forward if we were to look at school choice or some other items? Because we could add additional 6 or 7 additional students to the calculation and maybe come up with 40 students. I'm just wondering how that works.
So it is a multi-year average, and so that's what they're putting us at right now. But I think, and as she said, because it's based on ADM, it's the students who are here physically in the building from October 1st to the 15th, which is 11 days. So
11
she said,
days, yeah, 11 days.
It's the first half of October, in essence, who are physically in the building with their attendance rate factored into it. So, but then you take that number and then you average it with last year's number and you get a 2-year rolling average. But last year they didn't use the same method, so they had to adjust the equalized pupil number to get the number. I think it was 28 is what she showed us, I think, and then it went up to 32. But that 28 was a fake number because they didn't use that method last year. So, but yeah, that number would, if more students, if the school's open and students are coming and you're adding kids during that census period, then that number will increase over a 2-year rolling average.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Michael Pelton?
I just wanted to comment regarding the survey. I think it's valuable. It's valuable for the board to reach out to the community and establish what the mission and vision of the community is, and what the school is, because you at some point here are going to be looking at hiring staff, and I think it's important to consider those concepts when you are working through the application process.
I agree. Is there, I mean, do you have any suggestion, Michael? Like, other than, reaching out with the survey? Like, are you suggesting maybe like?
No, I think the survey is a great place to start. And once you have an idea what the survey produces with results, I think the board can sort of develop the idea a little bit further. And when I just think it's important to think about, what the vision of the school is in terms of the community, what their perspective is, and what the board's vision of the school is when you're hiring staff. It makes a huge difference sometimes on the type of person you're looking at.
That sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Russ or Joyce again?
Joyce this time, thank you. I totally agree with the idea of including a whole community-wide survey, because there are a lot of residents up here who pay taxes who don't live here year-round. We were one of them, but we are no longer. We live here now year-round. And for years, the non-homestead tax rate was higher than the homestead tax rate. And now the homestead tax rate is lower than the non-homestead. I think it's important to include all of the taxpayers in all of the decisions regarding the school. I mean, parents should be given priority. I don't know, I want to say priority, but they should be given heavier consideration. But it's not to say that you can ignore the rest of the residents, the rest of the taxpayers. I mean, some people might only be up here 3-4 months of the year, but they still maintain a residence here. And I think it's important to include them as well, because their tax rate is a factor in the overall calculations. Thank you.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Joy.
I mean, the good news here is that we're looking at what, based on Lori's numbers, a 20% decrease of tax rate. But I do agree, prioritizing parents, I think the survey is primarily about the kids, right? We're interested in what parents think the kids, what services they'd like to see, what vision. But yeah, certainly we want to hear from the entire community, including those that are, perhaps looking strictly at the tax rate and not at the kids' welfare. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's good to reach out to the greater mass, Joyce, because I think there's a lot of people out there that may not even think about, what happens in Windham when they're not there. And maybe they have something really good to offer, or some ideas, or something. I mean, something that we haven't thought of, perhaps. So for that reason alone, I mean, I think that's pretty good deal. It's just a questionnaire, I appreciate what you're saying. I think it's really important.
I'd like to see also how the survey results are weighted, whether or not, outside residents are given less weighting to residents or residents with families. I think that's also an important consideration to a survey.
I agree.
I'm not voting one way or the other. I'm just saying it is an important factor.
So it's SurveyMonkey, correct, Rory?
That's the plan. Yep. I haven't put it into there yet, but it's a pretty simple process, and I agree with Joyce completely. I do actually perform a lot of surveys for my job, and what you're saying is 100% correct, and it definitely needs to be noted. Who's completing the survey. It should be anonymous, but some information is helpful for, if we can have some demographics or their residency status, let's say, or if they have a child.
That could be asked in the questions, but I just wanted to speak to Joyce. To SurveyMonkey is generally anonymous as how it comes through. So even though everyone could have a chance how the questions get answered, that information just comes through as data. It's not like we'd be picking through going, oh, their opinion doesn't matter. It would be included in the reports from SurveyMonkey. So unless there were specific questions, we probably wouldn't have any clue whether it was from a family that lives here all the time or is somebody who is thinking about living here all the time.
Yeah, I mean, that said, I think we could add some questions around, are you a parent? Are you within Windham? Those type of questions. Just
Sure.
The good news here is that I'm a data scientist professionally, so I'm a statistician. So I would love to see those results and, build out a presentation. I'd be happy to do that. And yeah, I'll take considerable understanding on what's significant, how I can apply the weights, all of that. So yeah.
Awesome. That'd be fabulous, Daniel. Thank you. Ginny Crittenden, I see your hand up. Unless it's Dave. Oh, it's Ginny. Hi, Ginny.
It's Ginny. Hi. Yeah, I just was thinking about this survey and thinking it's a great idea. There's a couple of ways you could get it out to a lot of the people, and that one of them is the news and notes. Somebody could write put the survey into a news and notes, and a lot of people I think a lot of part-time people actually get that every couple of months, so that's one way. And then also just the fact that I have talked to people who are non-resident full-time, and they always say, we would love to be able to vote in Windham, but they can't do it because they vote somewhere else. So this would give them a chance to kind of have a vote if they're able to answer questions on a survey. It would give us an idea anyway of how people feel about stuff. Anyway, I just wanted to put a plug in for the news and notes because it gets to a lot of people.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jenny.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else for strategic planning we want to go over? Then we can move on to policies.
All right, this is round 2 with this batch of policies. These are all, as we talked about before, either policies that you had but needed updating or policies that you're missing that were required. You are not adopting anything here that is recommended at this point. These are all just the required ones, either ones you didn't have or updating ones you currently had based on the VSBA recommendations. You have already warned them at a previous meeting. You can adopt them in one fell swoop by naming them all. You don't need multiple motions, I don't think. If you're more comfortable with that, you can do it multiple, however you want to do it. It's up to you guys.
I would love to do it in one fell swoop. However, I guess I would probably ask the audience if folks have, if they want anything kind of highlighted regarding those policies to be a little bit more informed. We can also, I think all of that on the agenda. You did a very nice job there, Bob. We're linking each one so that those are all obtainable right from the link from the document itself. But if there's nobody that really wants to go through each one or anyone specifically, we can just name them all off. So I don't see any hands raised yet. And Rory and Daniel, do you have any concerns or anything that you want to go over with these?
Nope. These are all the mandatory ones.
Yes. So I move to adopt the following policies. A1, B1, B2, B3, B4, B5, B7, C4, C5, C7, C10, C13, C14, C15, F1, F2. Can I get a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Crystal?
I just have a question about the, sorry, I don't have the agenda open. It's the alcohol and drug testing for bus drivers. Since we own our own bus, can somebody touch base on, does that come from the district or the Department of Transportation? How does it work for Windham?
So the Department of Transportation is a requirement that they're the ones that administer that, and they're, I'll speak, a bus driver would submit those results to the district.
So, and I see Crystal, Michael Pelton's hand is raised. I'm gonna just go on a guess here that he could speak to that as well. Michael?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, so not too long ago, I had to do that, and effectively an AOT comes to the town garage and they do the bus driver, and they also do our employees of the town as well, and then that goes to the state for testing.
Does that answer your question, Crystal?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Crystal, just to follow up, do you have a specific concern in mind towards alcohol testing? Is there past precedent I need to understand, or is there a reason you're questioning?
No, just I would say there's not a lot of districts that own their bus. So the bus companies actually take care of that. So I didn't know how it worked here.
Yeah, effectively, Crystal, anybody who's got a CDL is mandated for drug testing. And if they have a CDL, their name is on a rotating list that nobody's privy to until AOT says, here you go, you need to do a drug test, and they come through and do testing. It's a little bit different with the school busing thing. It's sort of an extra hoop that has to get done. So people who drive school buses might actually get tested more than, let's say, a semi driver. But so there's a little more rigorous testing, but effectively your name's on a rotating list, and whenever they decide to do it, they'll call you up and tell you they need to do it.
Very little notice.
Perfect.
Yeah, no notice.
That's a good question.
I have a quick question about C7 and student attendance.
Okay.
Under the administrative rules and procedures, says the superintendent shall develop administrative rules and procedures to ensure the implementation of this policy. And I was wondering what your rules look like, Bob.
Yeah, so we have in Windham County, there's a regional truancy protocol that was developed collaboratively between all the SUs and the state's attorney's office. And in essence, what it really deals with is truancy. What are the thresholds? How do we communicate when kids hit thresholds to families? When does DCF get notified? When does the state attorney get notified? So that's sort of the basis of it, just to ensure that kids under the age of 16 are following the law and the families are doing that. Additionally, we've added layers to define excused and unexcused, and and then of course COVID kind of threw a little wrench of that. But basically, trying to set some procedures so that the administrative assistants know how to handle a call from a parent, or a doctor's note, or a death in the family, or for high school kids a college visit, how to handle those as excused or unexcused, and then how that gets tracked in the system, so that when we're kicking out attendance letters using those thresholds I mentioned earlier, we're identifying the type of absence correctly so that a kid doesn't get kicked into a truancy protocol that shouldn't be.
Okay.
So, but yeah, no, we have a protocol that's shared among the SU based on a Windham County-wide truancy protocol developed with the state attorney's office.
Do excused absences count towards the truancy amount?
Nope.
And,
unexcused absences.
Okay.
Yep.
And is there a list of what counts as excused
There
absences?
is, yeah. And typically, schools have family handbooks that they share that has that information in it.
Okay.
I can't speak specifically if Windham did or didn't have one of those. I know that Glory wasn't here right at the start of the year, so I don't know what was communicated in the past. But typically that's what schools have. And the students who will be shifting to Townsend will receive a copy of that with those distinctions.
Okay.
Like, if there's a death in the family, it's an excused absence. If you're a doctor and you have a note, it's an excused absence. If the kid's not feeling well, but not unwell enough to go to the doctor, it might be considered unexcused. And then if you end up later, it extends and you get sick, then you get a note, then it might be turned to excused later. Yeah, exactly. So very, and particularly with the elementary students, it's they try to really defer to the parents. But as you might imagine, there are parents who will hold their kids out of school for not really being sick. And so those are the parents that we want to ensure that we are calling them unexcused so that we can.
Okay.
So just a straight phone call from a parent, I'm not saying my kid's at school today, doesn't mean it's excused.
Right.
So, but yeah, there's a lot of different reasons. I won't say excuses. Well, there's a lot of different reasons that will categorize them. But yeah, only the unexcused would count towards truancy.
Okay. More specific, if parents wanted to pull their kids out for a day for another educational activity elsewhere, would that be considered an excused absence?
Depends on how many the kid has, probably. If it's not something that's an issue, then it won't be.
And
be a
maybe
factor.
how the kid is doing in school overall, and
Right. So we have the threshold. The first letter goes out after 7 absences, unexcused absences.
Yeah.
So like to get to 7 days like that, like that's a lot, and so you're missing a pretty good chunk of time. If that happens in like October versus May, very different. You know what I mean? As far as like how many days have already progressed, what percentage of the time is the kid there for, how much instruction are they missing. But even at the high school level, I've had when I was principal there, parents who would take a kid for a week on a trip.
Sure.
And say, well, it's education. I'll be like, great, it's going to be unexcused. I'm not going to be calling DCF on you because I know you're on a trip with your kid. So like you try to negotiate it that way. But,
so it's a case by case also situation.
But there are some guidelines so that the principals and the administrative assistants kind of have some framework to work with it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
Any further discussion?
That was a lot of detail. I'm sorry.
That was perfect. That's what I wanted.
All right, hearing none. All those in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, all those policies I listed before have been adopted.
Thank you.
So, we are now on to the executive session and, trying to figure out how we're gonna read
Yeah.
this.
So you have two, right, to think about. And I was trying to think if there's a way to merge them into one motion. But the challenge this is that there's two different types of executive session. One that you have to move to find something first and then move to executive session, and one that you can go directly into executive session. The one that's on your agenda around student records, which is about the tuition request, that one you can go directly in. But the one that I am suggesting that we add at the beginning of the meeting around contractual matters for current employees, that one is a two-step process. So I've never dealt with like a two-step and a one-step together, how you would do that, or whether you want to do them separately. You could maybe do it all at once, do all three of them, and then be in executive session. And maybe there's someone in the audience that knows Robert's rules better than me on how to interpret that.
So I think, just in case anybody was chiming in there, what we'll do is discussion that. I'm gonna combine them. Watch me go here. Okay, so I move to find that premature general public knowledge would clearly place the board at a substantial disadvantage. Can I get a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, I motion to enter executive session under 1 VS AS 313 A1
And
7 for the purpose of discussing contracts with employees and student records under Vermont statute. Chapter 1 S 313 A7 and 1. Can I get a second?
That was well played.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, so it is 20:08 p.m., 8:08 p.m., and the board will be going into executive session.
Looks that way.
Looks like it. Okay, so late evening here. It is 21:22 or 9:22 p.m. We have just exited executive session and are now back in open session. So let's see. We're in a motion that the Windham School Board deny the parents' request to pay tuition for the remainder of the 2023-2024 school year for all students requested to attend the Mountain School, a private independent school, because the board does not have the authority to pay tuition to a private independent school. Can I get a second?
Second.
Can we have some discussion? So this was that because it is a private independent school and we don't have the authority, if a tuition was sent in with a request to go to the Mountain School, that tuition will be denied because that is not able, we do not have the authority to pay the tuition. And then, any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay. And then I move that the Windham School Board deny that parents' request to pay back tuition for the remainder of for the beginning of the 2023-24 school year for student JC to attend Townsend School. Can I get a second? discussion?
Give a hand.
Crystal?
I'm just going to point out that I will be immediately appealing to the AOE because the judge's decision in the earlier case was my child is compromised due to the Windham school, but he didn't feel I took enough outlets to get Windham to repair this damage. So I will be immediately filing an appeal with the AOE.
Thank you, Crystal. Any other discussion?
I'm sorry, my hand raising thing isn't working.
Go ahead, Erin.
Can I please have a written letter stating why you will not, you are denying this, and the process from you guys for the AOE?
Yeah,
I believe that you're supposed to furnish that to us
We can
for
provide
any denial.
a written response to the denial and the reason for such. Yep.
Thank you, Erin. Hope you feel better. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Oh,
Yep.
we got hands. Sorry, Emily. Emily Goyette?
Hi, I would also like a written letter also, because I know that there's a part D to that article, and it seems as though you just don't want to do it. So I'd like a written response as well.
I think everyone
Yeah,
who
I'll do one for everybody.
everyone will get one. So that'll be clear. Is that all? Anything else, Emily?
Yeah.
No, that's all. Okay. Bridget Blanchard.
I just wanted to make sure I was going to get documentation of you guys denying our kids tuition. So, but Bob said he's going to have everyone get one. So thanks for that.
Thank you, Bridget. Okay, so for the motion to deny the request to pay back tuition, has been seconded. We've had discussion. Any further discussion on this particular motion? Emily, your hand's still up. I don't know if it's up from before or if you had something else to add. Oh, okay. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. Nay. Motion passes. Okay, so. Oh, it's number 4, adjourn. Is there make a motion to adjourn the meeting at 21:27 p.m., 9:27 p.m. Can I get a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Oh, hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion passes. Have a lovely evening, everyone. Stay healthy and well.